who is the most important staff member?
I think the most important staff member is the receptionist, because I think they can make or break your practice.
How do I start conversation with a patient?
How to start conversation? It's just building rapport.
For the person that's about to start a dental practice and they're now thinking about hiring staff, from having that blank canvas, what can that person start to think about in terms of getting the right people on board?
Well,
Many of you already know Ashley is a household name in dentistry. My first introduction was during my foundation year. I read the Tooth Fairy book. So my supervisor had the book and gave that book to me to read in my foundation year. So that was my introduction. And I took away the whole thing about, getting to learn the patient's pain point. So just even from that, without meeting Ashley, I had a lot of value from my first year as a dentist. And I'm sure in this podcast today, you'll be gaining a lot more value from what Ashley's going to be sharing with us today. So thank you, Ashley, for spending.
It's good. Thanks for having me. And I apologise for the attire today. And we're doing a bike ride in 2 weeks. We're cycling one end of Portugal, 500 miles in 5 days. Yeah. So I'm trying to use or squeeze every minute of the day so I can cycle. So I've cycled to work and I'll be cycling home after today as well. Yeah, it's great. Thanks for coming over.
Fantastic. And I mean, we might as well get straight into it. One of the things I've noticed within dentistry is, you can have all the good intentions in the world, but if the team is not on board, anything that you want to implement doesn't really take off. So what's been your experience in terms of that mismatch between a practice wanting to do something and the team not being in sync with the vision of the practice?
Well, you've just probably nailed it, really, that we have a lot of practice owners that come on the courses and they go away with all this great intentions, and the team sit there and say, well, Dr. Jones is back in today. Let's let him get what off his chest, and then we'll just get back to normal again by Wednesday. So, but yeah, as you've rightly said, the whole team is absolutely crucial to the creating a world-class patient journey, the ethical sales approach, the whole consultation. I mean, the dentist can do a great consultation. The patient can be committed to going ahead, and then the patient goes to the desk and has got a query about the price or just wants clarification or something, and then you've got the receptionist who's, depending where they come from, but sometimes can often be known as sales prevention officers, and they're just not equipped, or they can't deal with whatever the patient's concern is, or they put their own prejudices in the way and think, the treatment is expensive and I couldn't afford to pay for that. So it must be, I can understand the patient having that objection. And they'll say something like, well, go home and think about it. So the whole team is crucial to creating a world-class patient journey. I think we talked, didn't we, about, I often say to dentists, I wish my team members would give this 5-star customer service, this 5-star patient journey. Well, if you don't train them, then they don't know. But the second thing is, the chances are they may have never experienced a 5-star hotel or a Michelin star restaurant. So unless they've experienced it or seen it, they won't understand what it's like. Mm-hmm. So, the whole team is crucial. I always remember a very good client of mine. We did lots of work together, based in Wales. And big orthodontic practice. We went every single year. I went and trained his whole team, and he sent people on our team as well. And I used to love going over there. But they had Viren saw the whole team approach, and they had targets, and if they reached a certain target, he would take them to the American Orthodontic Conference, and he insisted that he'd pay for the whole conference. They'd have 4 nights out in nice restaurants. He'd buy them more nice dresses, so when they went to the restaurants, they were smartly dressed. They fitted in, and he said to me that I'm taking working class ladies from, in some cases ex-council estate, and I'm taking them into this new 5-star arena, because when I come back, I want them to be able to live with this. But unless they experience it, they just don't know what it's like. So it's the training, and of course, let them go and see what it's like. Go and visit this experience, so they can see for themselves what it's like. And when they come back, they can start changing their behaviours with the whole patients. Yeah, so it's crucial, absolutely crucial.
I mean, when you mention it, it just seems so blindingly obvious.
Yeah.
But we don't all see it. So how have you managed to get to this stage where you're able to pick out the obvious things and make them very relatable and obvious?
Yeah. I think what I'm... By the way, if you ask my wife, she's got a long list of things that I'm absolutely hopeless at. And that list is getting longer and longer and longer. So I'm only really good at about 3 or 4 things. Now in my life, I just want to become better at the 3 or 4 things. But I think, common sense, problem with common sense is it's not always common. And I think what I can see is I can come in from the outside and look in at what systems and what dental practices are doing and saying, well, why are you doing it that way? Why don't you just tweak it, change this? And, for example, we talk about customer service, why are you answering the telephone on the reception desk? Well, it's always been done that way. But that's probably about the worst place you could deal with if a patient's inquiring about a £10,000 treatment plan. You do implants and you're answering a phone call at a desk with 3 people waiting. It's going to be the worst place in the whole practice. You're better off answering it in the broom cupboard on the 3rd floor somewhere. So I think what I'm pretty good at is seeing the obvious, what I think is the bleeding obvious, and common sense, and expressing it in a way that, when dental practices get the ideas, I do it in a humorous way, and hopefully we have fun at it, we laugh at ourselves, and they realise actually what we are saying to patients is putting them off, or we're putting these extra barriers in the way, and you're all right. So I try and do it and get the whole team involved. I try and do it in a very humorous way, and I try and do it in a way that it does become obvious. But the problem is lots of people have been doing this because it's always been done that way, and that's not really get you different results.
Yeah.
And what would you say? How much of it would you say is mindset as opposed to systems or leadership when it comes to things like even changing people's behaviour in the dental practice?
Well, the mindset is, to me, is absolutely essential. So I'll give you a great example. We talked about this on our course on Friday. So if you have, for example, let's say you've got a National Health Service practice and they want to go and implement a membership plan. Right, well, the people that could be heavily involved in the conversations could be the reception desk. That could be, I'm just saying, they're going to be involved in some of the conversations. Well, if they don't believe in the membership plan, if they think everyone should get National Health Service and be down to it, with all the will in the world, I can train that lady, or gentleman, whoever it is, I can give them the skills, I can give them, here's how to present it and sell it and talk about benefits and then don't forget to close. But if they don't believe in it, it's just a complete utter waste of time, So the mindset is absolutely essential. Here's another example will be, if you think about when you're offering treatment, we'll talk about implant treatment because again, it came up on Friday with a course I was delivering. Out of a lot of dentists struggle with the discussion of fees. They discount a lot and they find it challenging. But I always say to a dentist, well, think about it. If a patient's got a loose denture and what's going on in their lives at the moment, and you replace that denture with an implant, and the fee is £2,500, £3,000, whatever it is. Think about the patient's life. You've been that patient about 3 months later, and ask them how things going, what's life like since you've had the implant compared to what was life like before. It's out the two parties, the patient wins more than the dentist. You've got your 2,500, whatever the fee is. Yeah, you got that. You've won. You've done, well out there. But out the transaction, the patient always gets significantly more value than you, the dentist. So your fees are really tremendous value because the other party wins more than you. Now, it's only when a dentist realises that you're absolutely right. And I said, well, you've got to bring them back 3 months later and sit down and check your work, see if it's okay, and then sit down and have the conversation, and then bring your receptionist in, make sure everyone hears that conversation, and that way everyone then will be more confident about discussing the fees. So mindset, is everything. You've got to believe in what you're selling, presenting, and my motto in my own life was, and I remember hearing this from somebody about 30 years ago, and it really made an impact on me, is if I'm speaking to someone about my courses and I know the other person is going to benefit more than me financially, and I know they are because I've had 25 years experience of working in dentistry, I'm doing that person a disservice by not getting them on my courses, because actually at the end of the day they're going to lose more than me. So mindset.
And what would you say then? Obviously, when it comes to sales, and this is a bit about what you do, people talk about how you sell in dentistry or how you present things in dentistry has to be slightly different to the rest of the other industries and that sort of thing. So let's say even like how you deliver your course compared to how you would sell in a different industry. What's the key difference?
What's the key difference between?
So basically doing sales in the dental profession and doing it just in any other industry.
In any other industry. Well, there is a structure. And really, because I have spent 10 years before my working life working with dentists, where I used to coach and train all sorts of industries. So I have worked, and to occasionally I still do that work as well. I enjoy doing it, by the way. But it's actually the same structure, really. But you just got to, when you deliver the programs, you just got to understand the challenges that the person has and make that information so that they can see it fits and that it's relevant to them and that they can use it and then get benefit from it, if that makes sense. So it's understanding that the mindset, what's going on, and the challenges that the dentist faces, so that material works. But in fair, I could deliver a course with dentists, recruitment people, I can have all sorts of industry, and I could still make my information relevant because they still, across the board, they still make the same mistakes. But it's just understanding what's going on in that person's mind, what's barriers they're impacting, and then making sure the information you give to them is absolutely is relevant to them. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah. Sorry, because that was a slight side note. But
it's fine.
I want to ask for the person that's about to start a dental practice and they're now thinking about hiring staff. From having that blank canvas, what can that person start to think about in terms of getting the right people on board and not just recruiting the way it's always been done within dentistry?
Well, I had a client who contacted me recently, and he's looking for a really good receptionist, and he was talking through some of his CVs. And this is a high-end dental practice, so we'll be doing lots of cosmetic treatments, orthodontics, implants, or all sorts. And he sent me some CVs, and one of them was from a doctor's surgery. Receptionist worked there. Now, I'm making a generalisation here, and I probably shouldn't do it, and it won't film as well at the same time, which isn't. But if I was opening, because she's worked in a receptionist area, that's probably what the qualities is seeing in that person. Now, hands down, they have a very, very difficult job. I get it, and I've not been to doctors for a long time, so But when I do go in there, I can see how busy they are and they're non-stop, and it's a difficult job. But if I was opening a dental practice, as an example, I would probably want a salesperson, somebody who's worked in hospitality, somebody who has worked in sales and front-end facial, who's really good at connecting and understands sales. Because to me, it's a very, very important job. So I would be looking at my key positions, such as receptionist, and thinking, actually, is it somebody from my next reception, or can we? Because if they've got great communication skills, they're great with people, and they've got the right attitude. All the other stuff can be trained. You could train somebody the product knowledge very quickly. They don't need to know too much anyway, really. If they know too much, it's sometimes a barrier. So I would definitely be thinking about those sort of skills. Attitude, obviously, is important. If you've got the right attitude, everything else can be trained. And I think if I was employing a dentist, I'd want to have a dentist who's on courses, who's always advancing their technical skills, has a great attitude, but great with people as well. Because at the end of the day, it's going to be the people skills that are going to help them become their own successful, but the practice success as well. And I think team players, is crucial. Somebody who's not an individual, that can work within a team, that gets on well with people. So those are the sort of things that I would be definitely looking for if I was opening a dental practice. We've just actually interviewed on our podcast today, myself and Chris. I delivered a course in Perth in Australia a couple of months ago, and we interviewed the people that own the practice. It was Michael and Marina Chan, and I remember chatting with one of their nurses on day 2 of the course, and we had lunch together, and she turned around and she said, it doesn't get greener than this. And to have a nurse say this is the best place to work for and I won't go anywhere else is a great compliment. I very rarely hear that. But when you think about all the things that the Chans do to create this team environment, the morning huddle, the constant training they do all the time, the retreats, they talk about a 4-day retreat that they have every year where they go to a wine place. So all these things they do to create this incredible team environment. And on the podcast, hopefully I'm plugging it as well, he talks a lot about how he recruits people. We went on a bike ride, and if the dentist, he wants to recruit a dentist, but if they're not on courses advancing themselves, they're not for him. So he has extremely high standards. So I don't know, long-winded answer. We've answered that question, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And obviously you've talked a few things about obviously people, and what are some other best practices that you've seen as you're going into different dental practices about how teams have been able to build that team spirit, kind of get people really on board with the vision of the practice?
Well, I think what Michael and Marina were talking about today is when the morning huddle is of everything that they do. It's the 7:45 morning huddle because they open the doors at 8, and it's not negotiable. Everyone's in the practice for 7:30. Everyone's got the scrubs on. Everyone's had a cup of tea and a chat, and at 7:45 it's business. And you go into some practices, and John won't come in until 10 to 9. He's dropping the kids off, and all these excuses, and it never gets done properly. So one of the things that he talked about creating this team spirit, and he gets a different person each day to run the team meetings. So he just sits there and watches his people grow, these model huddling. So that was a big thing I took away from the interview today. And every successful practice I know has that huddle, and it's just not negotiable. And I think what Michael and Marina was talking about today is when they go away on these treats, they talked about the Highland Mansion on a winery, and the wine's flowing for 2 days. They play games, they have barbecues and everything else. But, at the end of each day, they do brainstorming. What things can we do differently? And he says, we all I want to do is listen. We want ideas from the people. And he said, after a few glasses of wine, when everyone's had a few, he says, it's amazing how people open up and talk amongst themselves. And he says, the best ideas is had off the nurses and off reception is when they've been, they've had a few glasses and it's all worked well. So I thought that was just, and staff come away and it's the highlight of the year. So those sort of things.
I mean, from your perspective, how have you seen dentistry change from when you first started working with dental practices to now? How would you say things have changed within dentistry?
Well, I think the big change is definitely away from the National Health Service to practices becoming more private. I think that's definitely a big change. I think there's, the other big change is obviously is the growth of cosmetic dentistry. Years ago, dentist A would come on one of my courses because he wants to, present just, low value treatments, crowns, veneers, but now the treatment plans are in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 pounds. Mm-hmm. So the value's gone up, and it just seems, the growth of these programs, such as Love Island or these I don't know what the title, reality TV shows. I can't think of the title. Mm-hmm. It's been a long day, but that's been great for the dental industry because people, want a nice smile. They want to spend money on themselves and improve and look the part. Yeah. So that's been a definite change that I've noticed. And dentists want more help here now, and they've recognised that yes, they can go on all these technical courses, but that's not going to help them sell it better. And so the growth of my business has really come on the back of that, I think. Yeah, definitely.
Just on a side note, I was just thinking this: how do you end up choosing the dental practice you go to and you take your family to?
Oh,
after working with dentists for so long.
Well, a long story, but I to be honest, I had a very, very good friend of mine who was one of the first dentists ever actually to take one of my ethical selling courses, became a very good friend, and he was my dentist, but he moved around and he moved to Shrewsbury, so it was a bit too far for me to go and get my teeth done. So I've chose a practice at just 5 minutes walk from where I live, to be honest. Yeah. I looked at their website, looked pretty good, so let's go in there. I think she's scared though every time I walk in, because I think she's worried about she's saying the right thing and everything else. So so it's a dental practice just 5 minutes from my house.
Have they been on your course?
Don't think they have actually. I should have picked someone they have. I think they've done bits with us, but not a lot. No. But maybe we should target them. Actually, we should probably do them. Yeah.
What have been some standout moments for you throughout your career working with dentists?
What's my standout moment?
Or a few standout moments that you can say those really stuck with you.
I think the launch when we released the first book, and I remember getting it in the post. Don't Wait for the Tooth Fairy, How to Communicate Effectively and Create the Perfect Patient Journey, and I had the book and it was all my name on it. I think that was a great day because I was rubbish at school. I got 3 O-levels and half the audience probably won't know what an O-level is. But that was a standout day. I remember the book. I think when I did my first presentation in Atlanta in America was another standout moment because in the back of my mind, it was about 10 years ago, I thought I'd love to deliver some courses in the States, and then we did in the back of that presentation. And I remember then, just a few years ago, speaking at the American Aesthetic Congress with 2,500 people, and that was the opening lecture on the main stage for 2 hours. That was a great moment to be at that conference for 4 days, because you really get, America, everything's 10 times bigger than what we do here in the UK. But I think one of the best program, the standout one was the first time I did the 2-day ethical selling course in Sydney in Australia. And we had about 40 delegates there, and it was was an amazing hotel and Sydney Harbour and everything. It was just a dream come true, really. Yeah. So that was, there was some good times.
Yeah. Was there a time where you thought, okay, I'm fully within the dental industry now? Because at the start, I guess you're trying to really network, connect, and get yourself established. When would you say you felt like,
I've arrived.
Have arrived.
Yeah. I try not to think like that. I know it sounds really strange, but I try not to think that I've cracked it and all I need to do is just turn up and there'll be a queue of people outside the door. It just doesn't happen like that. You know, there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes. People see these good numbers on the courses and they think, you know, he's great. But, you know, I've had 5 conversations today and those 5 conversations have created 5 2-hour work presentations I've got to put together, some proposals. There's a lot of hard work and long hours. So I try not to think that I've arrived yet, because if I did, then I think I'd probably took the foot off the gas, and I got a sneaky feeling it would bite me somewhere where I don't want to mention on TV, so on the video. But I think obviously, when I'm at the dentist show last weekend, there's a lot of people that know who I am. There's, you know, we literally had people coming to our exhibition stand all day, new clients, a lot of existing people. So, you know, obviously we've known, but there's still. I don't think I'd hate to think I've arrived and I don't need to do anything anymore, because it just doesn't work like that, you know. And I always say that to clients: don't think you've cracked it, because you take the foot off the gas, you'll have quiet weeks and quiet months. It always happens. Yeah.
And actually, you obviously in your course you talk a lot about discounting. People discounting in their heads before they, you know, say the prices. What we're seeing a lot in dentistry at the moment is in people's marketing.
Yeah.
They're not exactly discounting in their heads, but to attract more people, they're putting out these big discounts. And I'm speaking to a lot of dentists who are saying, I want to be able to just go out there and be able to compete without having to say I'm, you know, taking £2,000 off Invisalign.
Yeah.
What are some things that you can say that can help the dental practice that saying, I don't want to be doing, you know, £2,000 off. I just want to offer a great service, but still attract people.
So this is in the actual marketing itself then? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, I think what you would. It's a great question, and I've probably got an hour answer on here. But I think what you've probably got to try. Well, we're launching a new online course this week, or in the next week or so, and we're not offering a discount for say, but we're giving the people that buy that program some incredible of credible value. So let me go back one. I think rather than go in and try and discount and compete at price, why don't you add significant value to the patient that but doesn't really cost you that much? So, for example, you could. I'm just thinking out loud here, but you could say offer free teeth whitening. It would normally cost, say, £650. Well, for example, you know, it doesn't really cost you that much, but is of significant value to the patient. The patient gets tremendous value. You could talk about, for example, you talked about Invisalign there, or if you're doing orthodontics, you could talk about your proposition is that you follow up with the patient after the debond, so the patient, you know, because you know as well as I know, if patients don't keep the retainers on, the teeth can move and go back. So maybe your marketing could be geared to free teeth whitening, plus also follow-up care after the treatment's finished. Again, it doesn't cost you that much, but could be of significant value to the patient.
So one of the things that I've heard you talk about and I really like is that, you know, as dentists, we can talk about the features of something too much. So typical example, tooth whitening, talk about the concentration of the tooth whitening, you know, the steps, come in, get your scan taken, get the molds taken. We're talking about all of that. And, you know, the patient's just glazing over.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything to the patient.
Yeah.
Just talk to us a little bit about that trap that we can so easily fall into.
Yeah. Well, the analogy that I use is, if I was chatting to you guys and I was a travel agent, and he said to me, Ashley, can you find us somewhere? And I say, well, you know, Arnold, Chico, where would you like to go? And he turned around and say, well, I'm not bothered. As long as it's got the four S's. And I say, well, what are the four S's? You want sun, sea, sand, and you want sangria. So that's what you're looking for. That's called your destination. As long as it's got the four things there, that's all that happens. So if I say, okay, fine. Now, if I was to turn around to you now and say, okay, thanks for that. Can I just before I show you where you're going, would you mind if I just give you a quick 35-minute presentation on the aeroplane that's going to get you there? And then I start talking about the features of the plane, how it's made, where it's made, what how many seats the plane's got, the engine size, the combustion, the wings, how they're made, how they work. You're not that bothered.
Yeah.
And dentists want to talk about planes. And what patients are interested in is the destination.
Yeah.
So I always use that as an analogy, is find out what the patient's looking for. If they're coming in for teeth whitening, find out what it is, what's the goals, what's the vision, why they want to go there. Tell them how you can help them. And then once they turn around and say, yes, I'm on board and I'm happy with the price, and then you can talk about the journey. Does that make sense? Because but dentists just love to talk about planes, and patients are not really that bothered about the planes unless they're an engineer or a teacher. but you know, someone. But yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely one of the biggest takeaway points I took. And I'm now consciously just forcing myself to stop talking about features. Don't talk about features.
It's about the benefits.
And actually, just to round it off, is it okay if we could do like a little kind of quick fire round?
Yeah.
Maybe we can ask you a few questions based around what you teach and that.
Okay, sure.
Just a very quick main point that you would give to that.
Okay.
So I can start off with, how do I start conversation with a patient?
How to start conversation? It's just building rapport. You've got to build rapport with people. You know, rapport builds trust. And patients aren't going to you've got to get the patients to like you, to trust you. So the best way of doing that is to become genuinely interested in your patients, find some common thing that you're interested in, and just build that rapport. And rapport is the most important part of the whole selling process, because if you haven't got rapport, there's no trust, and the rest of it is a complete waste of time. So building rapport.
In your opinion, who is the most important staff member?
I think the most important staff member is the receptionist, because I think they can make or break your practice. If you've got a really good receptionist, they can bring in lots of new appointments. If you've got someone who's not that great, you know, they could kill your practice. So I think receptionists are the most important people in the practice. That's the people that answer the phone, and that's the people that the patient sees when they first come in.
Yeah.
Is that a quick fire one?
Yeah. So how can I change the logistics of my practice to make it more effective, to be able to, you know, speak to patients and basically explain better?
I think you need to create the right environment to have conversations with your patients. You've got to create the right environment. That's the most important thing of them all. You know, again, another conversation we had on Friday on a course, and clients were asking me, you know, what's the best way of selling a membership plan? And, and I always said, well, you know, put 5 or 10 minutes extra in the appointment. Well, you know, it adds up. I said, well, yeah, but you're not having a £16 a month conversation. Think about that patient staying with you for 10 years. They could potentially worth £5,000, £6,000, £7,000, £8,000 plus the people they know and everything else. So create the right space and the right environment to have proper conversations. And that means, or might mean, you need to take the phone off the reception desk and answer the phone in a quiet environment, in a call center environment, or a room where you can have a proper conversation with somebody.
Would you rather have more patients or more time with each patient?
Great question, but I think you want to have more time with the right type of patient.
Okay, so tell us a bit more about that.
Well, you want somebody who's genuinely interested in your services and what you've got to offer. You know, does that make sense? So, you know, I often will my fees for presentation will often determine who's in the audience, if it's the right type of client for me.
Yeah.
And to follow on that, what do you say if patients say it's too expensive?
Well, you've got to show empathy with them, find and understand their concern. Don't take it personally. Don't get defensive, and then find out what it is that why they think it's expensive. So show empathy first, and then find out what it is that they consider and why they think your treatment is expensive, and see, because so often what patients say, how we interpret it, what they really mean can often be completely different. So it's really finding out what it is. And it actually might not be expensive. They just might want help with how to make the payments. Does that make sense? So it's nothing to do with the price. It's just, can you help me so I can afford the payments?
Interesting.
How does ethical and sales go together?
How does ethical? I think ethical sales is just about it's just about building rapport. It's understanding what your patient's problems are, solving them in a language that the patient understands, and then asking them if they're happy to move on. And that's what I call ethical. What I call unethical is when you're hard selling, trying to sell something to a patient that they don't really need or want, or you haven't asked enough questions to understand what they're looking for. So hence you go talking about aeroplanes and jumping in. That's unethical as far as I'm concerned. So ethical is creating win-win relationships, but always the patient always wins more than you. And
I guess final question to wrap it up. If you never had to work to earn, what would you do? What would you be doing if you didn't have to work to earn? So you don't have to think about earning money or an income.
What would I like to do?
What would you do?
With my time? I think I'd probably do this. So I've got the money in the bank, and I'd probably do this, but be really, really choosy who I work with. Choosier. Or gardening. I like gardening on a sunny day in Manchester.
Yeah.
I like my garden.
Good. So we'll round it off there. But obviously, before we go, is there anything that you would like people to know about what you're doing? You talked about a course that you're releasing. Is there anything else that you'd like to?
Yeah, if people are really interested in knowing a bit more about what we do, please go to my website, www.ashleylatta.com with LEY. We've got a free newsletter there. We send a free newsletter videos every week full of tips, and so you can join the mailing list there, and you can just buy some. If you want to join our family, there's books there for anything from £10, £12, and you can start joining our family. So something like that. So probably the best place to start is to go there. We've got a YouTube channel with over 200 videos on, and those are the good places. And we post on Instagram and Facebook every day. So join our social network that way.
Fantastic. That was great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good.